guess we'll have another crack at it, seeing we got rained off yesterday.
Yeah. No, that was...
Did you get stuck in any of the rain yesterday?
In the morning, I went and did some mesh for the boys out at airport job. Yeah, there's a big mall going out there, enormous. 2,000 linear meters of gutters, so the roof's substantial.
Sheesh.
Yeah, so just caught in that rain when it started getting bad in the morning.
Yep.
So got the stuff up on the roof, and then they did some cutting underneath, and then got out of there. And then even then in the morning, the traffic started to turn bad. Yeah.
So did that roof perform as intended?
Nah, this is early stages.
Early.
So this was just plywood, and we were just putting down the mesh so that it's at least testable. Yep.
Mate, because that rain yesterday, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as all the previous stuff.
No.
But I think it was the way that that civil defence bloody text came out and it made everyone panic.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking
people are sensitive to it now.
Yeah. Overly sensitive, maybe.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I think so.
Yeah, because I was down in the CBD and straight out into the traffic and like gridlock for 2.5 hours, and that was a real pain in the ass because of the old fuel light came on in the car, and I'm thinking, oh shit. I was heading to the bloody fuel station, and the fuel light comes on. You're sort of sitting there very anxious
watching
about
it count down.
Causing a bigger issue if your car shits itself in the middle of a gridlock and no one can move.
I want to know when it goes to that zero.
Yeah.
Like how much is left there? Is there a reserve?
Well, I had this thing where it said 40 k's, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But then within a space of 100 meters, crawling, it went down to 20, and I was like,
it chops down. It's not. That causes me some stress as well, actually.
Yeah, but like you say, it'd be good to know exactly where it lies.
But then, if we knew that, we'd probably push that to that as well.
Yeah, I felt like going back to the teenage days where you can't bloody afford a tank of gas. It was just a bad situation, I guess. But yeah, how's business been going, man? Like, how's the leak detection industry going?
Well, with all this rain, what we learned was that membranes don't appear to be leaking when the water's pouring over the edges. So people are more concerned about that. Membranes in general across Auckland held up well. It wasn't like they gave way like in some other. It was more to do with land problems. Buildings, they are somewhat designed to deal with heavy rainfall.
Yep.
So that was pleasing to see. We thought we were going to be inundated with things we had to go through. The main answer we gave back was, hey, we had a very significant weather event. If this happens again, call us back. But if this situation doesn't happen again, well, then it was just because that was madness.
Well, I guess we had yesterday you could say this is the third weather event. We had the two back in January.
Yep.
With the the flooding and then the cyclone and that. So did you guys get any more or less inquiry around that or after that?
We definitely had more inquiries. Just a lot of it was just knowing that if we spend a little bit of time on the phone with the person, we can probably get through the issue, find out enough about it, because otherwise you'd be sending vehicles all over the place. So it was really just, instead of committing to the job was almost the last thing for an investigation. Because all the new works are still going on, like this construction just carries on and they're scheduled, so that's your non-flexible work. And this investigation stuff we just had to become far better at qualifying it on the phone and being helpful. And a lot of the time was like, hey, this is who you should talk to in this situation, and what are we dealing with? It isn't membrane. Lots of, even in that time, it was just a lot of stormwater overflow, that sort of thing. But it was talking to them on the phone, seeing if it happened again, or steering them in the right direction towards plumbers, roofers, audio leak detection.
That's good though, because I mean, from a customer service point of view, you're still helping people out, and they're probably thinking, oh shit, thanks for the advice. You're not always trying to sell something to people. You might just be going, well, call me back when you actually need us, and so you're still being helpful. Qualifying's a big one, eh? Like you're sort of, are these people kicking tires, or are they wasting time, or are they just shopping around? So I think the qualifying thing's a good way to go, man. Save yourself a bit of time and money.
I think we're lucky that when people call, they have an issue, and lots of times we don't want to put the time there. So that is the most important part about it. If we can qualify it, being a plumber helps so much, because so many times people will call and say, hey, look, we've got this increased water bill, and able to go through on the phone, get them to run all the normal checks, putting a bit of toilet paper on the back of the toilet bowl, that sort of thing. So many times there's a lot of that going on. Like, it's just an increased bill, it's not much, but say you've been away and the toilet's just running, but they're prepared to go to a big extent to find out what this is, and sometimes chasing a bit of a ghost, especially with water.
Yeah. Does the old toilet paper on the back of the bowl, does that just indicate that there's water running? You can see
water
it
running, so that cistern is like emptying, and then once that goes to a certain level, it fills it up, and then this is just happening, and really no one knows. And lots of people will pick it up with, like, they're being woken up in the night from the toilet cistern flushing. But if that's somewhere downstairs, and you never hear it, that's 9 litres or 6 litres dropping out sort of every time that finally gets to a point.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
It's a lot of water, eh? And
it's a lot of water.
Up, especially if you don't get around to dealing with it for a while. You know, like you say, some people only really realise that once the bloody water bill comes through.
Yeah, that's right. My dad would always put like a 2 litre milk bottle in the cistern, because that's 2 litres that can just never go.
You'd be saved.
Yeah. Each time.
I remember they did that. It was the Auckland water crisis back in the 90s, and they made they sort of said that's when that old if it's yellow, let it mellow, if it's brown, flush it down type thing. But then a lot of people did put some volume into the cistern to save a bit of water. Good idea, especially if you're on a tank or something like that. But like, your tanks will be pretty full at the moment with with the amount of rain we've had.
I was reading in the 20s and the 30s in Auckland, you would store your solids, and in the night between midnight and 6 a.m. there were people who came and collected that.
Really?
And once a week, far less population. It would be impossible now. That's what would happen. And so men would go out in the trees for ones, and then twos was being collected by a service, an Auckland service.
It's a horrific.
That's old school.
It's real old school.
And they were only allowed to operate in that night shift.
That's like back in the Victorian days in like England and stuff, where they, you literally throw your shit out onto the street and people would come and sweep it up. Not that bad, obviously, but I read an article like a while back that in Dubai they didn't used to have a decent sewer system. So they would have similar things. They would have tanks, and they'd have these trucks. I think they were orange trucks, or the people that were working and were dressed in orange or something like that, and they'd come around and at night and suck out the shit, because there was nowhere for it to go, and they didn't have the infrastructure in the sandy sort of desert and stuff. So
I wonder where it goes now. It's probably they will have some sort of desalination plants and that sort of stuff. But
they probably turn it into gold or fuel or something like that. Hey, you were talking before about that tanking system, and that sounds bloody interesting. Tell us a bit more about that.
It's called Newton. It's a UK system where their regulations require 2 forms of tanking. So you'll have an outside buried system that's on the outside of the building, and then you have an integral, which is between the precast panels or in situ panels that are poured for the basement walls, where the pores are separated. They'll have water stop, which is like to turn the cold joint into, like, seal it so that water can't come through. But one that is deemed one of those can be a second is a tanking system on the inside that catches the water. The misconception about it is that if water's coming through a concrete wall, that it's somehow damaging the structure. Well, concrete's 2.5 times denser than water, so it's not going to go through that. It's only going through cold joints and cracks and things like that. So it's actually catching the water and pumping it out, let it come through, and dealing with it and putting it into the stormwater system. They then build walls in front of it. So it's actually a system that can be retrofitted for already leaking basements, but it can be one of those 2 systems, so that you can actually do something with your wall. You don't need to leave it as exposed concrete. You can have the system there and then build a nice wall in front of it, or whatever you can do with your basement. Could be offices or whatever, and there's pumps there that let it run.
Just what you said there about the water getting through. So it's not going to go through the actual concrete itself. It's going to go through any sort of gaps or joins or where there's steel potentially.
Yeah, so when there's a crack, there's going to be steel there.
Yeah.
And the water's obviously going to be passing past that steel.
Mm.
When it's like a precast panel, if that precast panel is not cracked, the water is not going through that. Like, even if you submerge that, don't quote me on this, but if you submerge that precast panel in water, like,
it's not going to soak it up.
It's denser than water. It's not a sponge.
Yeah.
So it's not going to get to the steel necessarily. Yeah.
So how did you actually come across the new sort of tanking idea?
This is something that's gone on for a long time in the UK, I think, because they've got so much of this underground situation that without digging, and the terrace housing, you can't just dig out and put something in there. So this system must have come from that sort of issue. I've heard of it being proof of the system working is that they've got it under a boat shed under the water level, and it is lets the water come in and slowly pumped out, and people are inside that boat shed below water.
So it's in an environment where there's water permanently, not just water every now and then when it rains.
That's right.
And that's pretty amazing. Did you sort of do the research to find that, or did someone approach you guys about it?
No, someone sort of they're getting into it, getting it into New Zealand, and then so they've sort of come to us and said, you've paved this way before and sort of been through every path and dead end there is in regards to this waterproofing area. Where would you start? So it was sort of talking about, especially when they started talking about, well, it comes with its own insurance. Where would you go with it? So it was sort of like, well, let's see what the insurance is and where does that fit, and then talk to NZDA, so your Architectural Designers Associations, your waterproofing membrane associations, and start to join up there, because those other membrane products don't offer something like this. So they're going to have their product on the outside anyway. If they could have something on the inside that catches any water that comes through on any failure or anything like that, they're also very happy with that. Because that never even questioned. That means that outside is probably never even been questioned.
Well, and there's that sort of that theory that you have these wet walls which are allowed to leak. Yeah.
And they just put a spoon drain at the bottom, and they're like, well, that's going there. You're like, okay.
So that help, essentially, would that help eliminate these wet walls? Or
this will mean that the wet wall isn't in your face every day. You know, you're going to move your car. It's being dealt with, and you know that it's being dealt with.
Mate, that's cool. So you guys going to, obviously that's further down the track, but you're going to get into a bit of that, and then I suppose you've got to get out there and, I guess, let people know about it, essentially.
Yeah, be like how to get that out there. And I think that using people like the body corporate managers, you know how you have the body corporate companies that sort of run all the formal systems, not necessarily the building managers. This is the they're everywhere, and some of them are huge, right? Some of them have 1,000 body corporates under their thing. So that's a good feeder to feed information out to go, hey, if you have this situation, this is an option for you. Some people were like, I've looked at hundreds of basements in Auckland, and people are like, well, what do we do? It's like, oh, this is the way it's meant to be. It's supposed to do this, but people still don't like that.
Well, then they think that something bad's happening in behind. Like we were saying before about the concrete, if there's water getting through, it must
what's
be
happening
affecting
to my
the
structure?
Concrete.
Which is a fair question.
Is it blowing out the steel, or what is it doing? So, the body corp manager would be a good one to get into, because they often have a lot of the links to the developers. And if you on new builds, it'd be a no-brainer to get that system in straight away. So,
I didn't think of that.
That'd be an avenue to go down.
It's another one I'll have to write down with you.
And so warm roofs. We talked about that last time as well, and you sort of touched on that. Is that project or that concept sort of has it developed, or has you gone to any further?
We've got a few spots. So what we had to do was we had to pay up front for the development of it, and then 30 sensors initially have to go into jobs. Oh, sorry. They have to go into buildings that are wet or just people want it. And then that goes in for assessment. So it's like a live assessment, because they have to check that, say if these are on hospitals, they don't interfere with anything, and that's how you get there's a lot of other things to it, but it's how you get this electrical cert for these products. And then these can go into these areas and read what's happening with this warm roof. Because even if it was built perfectly, servicemen, building wash people who actually are very conscientious, like we know where they've been, but they are really good. Like they are not the people responsible for continual damage to membrane. It's really impressive. But once we know what the humidity is, what the temperature of the roof is, we can start to go, hey, this insulation is wetter than it should be. Is it now a thermal bridge? But if you went and took that information to someone, you've got to provide that solution. But yeah, once these start going in, we're going to see how this warm roof industry, how this is performing. And the hard thing about it, same as the tanking, this stuff all goes in first. Like the membrane goes in first, then everybody's on it.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last time. That's where the damage occurs.
Yeah, this is like hard to win unless you got cameras on it all. And even if it was CCTV'd all the time, you're still not going to know that is leaking for quite a while. So it's sort of trying to make issues be picked up quicker. If we just know, so the trial was they put sensors in 2 bits of insulation, and he cut a little hole and injected 20 mils of water into it, and then over the next hour you saw the 2 lines separate. One had water, one didn't. So straight away that could set off an alarm. Hey, we think we have an issue here, and we can go back to the body corporate and go, hey, this is what we have.
So those sensors actually they feed information back to a box. Is there like an app that monitors, or how does it work?
It's all be live, so they can both see it, because they can trigger the alarm, or and say, hey, look, what should we do here? And because there's sort of one every 200 to 300 square meters, we can then go, instead of going, we need to test the whole roof, we can go, it actually started over here, so let's start here. So at least it's making our job easier with being specific.
So it works in a similar way to how you guys do your electrode testing in that, because you do literally just narrow it down based on a current. This time you're narrowing it down based on feedback from the sensors, but you're getting that information first, rather than going, oh, we'll start there and bloody work our way back. You go, we'll start there where we know what the issue is.
We've had warm roofs recently where we've tested them 3 times. First time was in construction, and everything we found was workmanship, a little bit of workmanship. We're talking minimal things, and some construction phase damage. Repaired those. Tested it 2 years later, because it's sort of under investigation, and there's some movement going on. When it's dry, you can't see it, but when we wet it and the sunlight's hitting that, and it's like a contrast, it looked like it was a bed sheet being pulled around the fixed points on the roof, like anchor points and stuff. Oh, that's weird. And so there was 6 movement things, 6 breaches that appeared to be from movement, no workmanship stuff. 2 years later, 57 of those. So it had continually moved, hot cold every day. And then, but no leaks downstairs. So that means that this warm roof is holding it all. Whatever amount of water is in there, it's holding it all. So that's the other thing we realised why this is good, is because if it doesn't leak downstairs, no one knows. And potentially the building is either hotter or colder during the months that summer, winter. So cooling and heating is more, because this insulation isn't providing the inertness that it should.
Can your sensors actually measure how far or how much movement there is?
No, that would be really good.
Shit, imagine that, because you don't actually think that the roof would move to the extent that you can see like the membrane like folding up like a bed sheet, like you say. You sort of think it might be moving as one, not in like different
when you
areas.
like pull say through a bath and you pulled a pencil through and it leaves that ripple,
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
boat from
Like a
distance.
wake.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Really minor, but when it's dry, you can't see it. When it's wet, it looks like it's like a tail off a boat.
Yeah. And that's fascinating, eh? Like, because I would have thought that everything would have moved, as one.
As one. Oh, it does all move as one, but say in the middle of the roof there is anchor points, which are like a little column.
Yeah.
So they never move. So the thing might be moving, and I think that rigid insulation, the expansion contraction, is like tiny. But what is that expansion when it's full of moisture? That is what I don't know.
That's cool. It's good, and you guys must have that's one good thing about what you do. You must have so much data that you collect, and you start to see these trends, happening, and you can start to identify problems more easily.
It was actually the conversation about the warm roofs being an issue was this guy who was within refrigeration, and he talked about how people get rid of their fridge because say the actual fridge panel has got an air leak in it or whatever, and so by it being cold in the inside and warm in the natural air, that this thing accumulates its own moisture.
Right.
And then people put it out on the road front to go away.
Yeah.
But that gave it time to dry out.
Oh,
so people take it and they're like, hey, this fridge is fine. And then the same thing happens to them. So he was saying, this is what the warm roof thing, if this thing's not a bag airtight, this thing will breathe.
That story about putting something out on the curb reminds me of this bloody thing I saw years ago, where someone put like a fridge out or a couch or something out on the curb, left it there for a few days, and no one took it. They're like, oh fuck, it's a free couch, just take it type thing. And then they decided to put a full sale sign on it and said full sale $500. And then someone came along and stole it. So it wasn't until there was like a value put on it, they're like, oh, we'll take that now. Yeah. But that's out of it. That must have happened to a lot of people, eh? Like someone's put out a dud fridge that they think is dud, and then all of a sudden they whoever's picked it up has got a new fridge.
Yeah, and they think that's fantastic. And then the same thing will happen to them.
Fucking hell. So you've been doing a bit of travelling recently as well. You've been over to China.
Yeah, I went to China. That was quite an experience to see a factory where when power lines go into the ground, we supply these boxes that do all the jointing in and can have fibre connections in them and provide that infrastructure that goes under the ground. And to go and see the factory, it was overwhelming, and just everything about where we went was everything is about growth, more community than you would think. Yes, they're all individuals, but they're a big race that are sort of all moving together. The infrastructure is very impressive, but the building, they will just continually building 18-story blocks of. There might be only 2 lights on, and a lot of them, they're building cities before people get there. Yeah. Whereas we sort of chase our tail. They are way out in front of themselves. Yeah.
Well, they call them those ghost cities, where they reckon there's just cities waiting for the people to occupy them. There's definitely 2 ways of thinking about it. It's like, okay, they're obviously going down the track of being prepared. Like you said, we tend to be more of the chase your tail thing. And I guess that comes down to how their society is structured essentially, where they're just like, we're going to do this and that's what's going to happen. Whereas over here we're like, oh, we think we should do this.
Here's our new problem.
Here's another problem.
Yeah. And I think business can be like that too. You think you're failing, but really if you take a breath, you're like, we actually just outgrew our system. We just got a bit fast for our system, and then it's so easy for people within the organisation to go, oh, we're unorganised, we're disorganised, and people get frustrated, and you're like, this is kind of a good thing if you look at it that way. Yes, we need to fix it and find something new, but the wheels haven't fallen off. The wheels haven't fallen off.
That's a bloody good point. It's almost like how a crab or a crayfish sheds its skin to grow, because it's got that hard bloody shell and it can't grow like a human would grow or a mammal or whatever.
Yeah, it's restriction.
Yeah, it's restriction, and then you shed that, and then you grow more.
You go again.
Yeah. So whereabouts in China were you?
I went to Hangzhou, and then in that area, just out into the country from there. So we landed in Shanghai, and we went about 4 hours west. It was a beautiful place. On where we stayed in the hotel, you looked over this beautiful river and like the developments, lots of these buildings with nobody in them, massive shopping centres. And then when I looked at it on Google Earth to say, when I was writing a report afterwards, Google Earth showed the river was an old highway. So they'd turned this highway, is now a river, and a city was built around it. There was nothing there.
So, so they built... Sorry, say that again?
So the river is almost... They've redirected the water and used the road infrastructure as... like just for a portion of it. It's come... Yeah, that road is no longer used.
Yeah.
And they have bridges over it.
Yeah, it's a river.
And now it's a city.
Shit.
Yeah, and you're just on the highways and you're just driving past hundreds, thousands of 18-story apartment blocks. Like a development in New Zealand is sort of one block. This is 35 blocks, all exactly the same, and a crane on each one, and they are all going at the same time. Yeah. And
amazing.
then they must go on to the next one. Like it's intense.
I guess we get this view of China, which is like sort of westernized, and mainly the American sort of view on China, how they want us to perceive China. But until you actually go there, like, were you sort of blown away that it was different to what you'd sort of thought it was going to be?
Yeah, so it, like, you get this impression that it's an ad hoc, like they're just having a go at everything. Well, not really. Like, it's just they are able to produce so much that just because you see it, if 90 things out of the 100 are made in China and some break, they're made in China. If they were made in another country, then we'd be saying that another, that's poor manufacture. It's just because they manufacture everything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to let the old dog out. Hang on.
He knows.
He wants to go and have a look around. Yeah, it's definitely a place I'd want to go to at some stage to have a look around. And you obviously had a purpose to go there. Like, would you go there on holiday, or was it mainly like good for a business trip?
Yeah, it was good for a business trip. I couldn't do it on my own either. I went with the other director, who was a pilot for 40 years, commercial pilot 40 years. If you want to travel with someone, that is the best. That is just story after story after story. Like just about not harrowing, just situations where this person has got to be the ultimate professional of calmness, and what they went through, like, that's unreal. And then you realise that they did the same thing the next week, with all those people in the back. Yeah. And they're good.
Mate, our oldest son, he's doing his private pilot's license at the moment, so he's starting to go into doing all his exams and stuff, and next year he's going to go and either Nelson or Palmy and do his CPL. So he's wanted to be a commercial pilot, since he was a bloody 3 years old. And it sounds like all these pilots have a very similar, they're all real relaxed kind of dudes when they're not flying a plane, but when they're on the job, it's like, they're all very punctual and timely and calm and precise.
Unbelievably calm.
Yeah,
that was the thing. He's told a story about this. They're all heading into this airport, which is difficult to land, but there was also like a storm, and the guy in front of them, the flight in front of them, pulled out and went somewhere else, and they continued, and he was safe first officer, and the captain said, "We're going to do this," and he said, "No worries," and obviously was calm in support. And then later on, the captain sort of said to him, "What did you think of that?" He's like, "Oh, that was touch and go." So, why don't you say something? He said, "Well, don't mistake my calmness for agreeance with you. It was just, you said you were going, so I support you."
Yep.
Yeah. Don't take that the wrong way. Don't take that as
exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah. Good travel companion.
Yeah.
So did you look at any other sort of new products while you're over there, or was it purely just to go and see the product that you guys already deal with?
Yeah, they had things that just was sort of timely for what we've been going through with our weather events. They had things where the curbstone was the drain. So the curbstone, which was composite, it had holes in it. It was like a grate. Like it still handled the weight of a car and a truck, but it allowed water in to move along the curbstone and get deposited into the stormwater drain. But it didn't let the debris in, or the large debris.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was allowed. So as soon as that was full of debris, the water just kind of went to the next bit along the road and was hopping in. So it sort of always allowed water to move.
That sounds like the stuff that you put on your gutters.
Yes, very much so.
Same sort of theory.
Yeah.
Fuck, mate, that sounds like a great idea.
It was really clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to start importing that.
There's just so much exposure to, like in New Zealand, that might be on 100 streets, and then one street it's like something's happened to it or it looks bad, and then you just get strung up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so hard. Like, we love a good tall poppy rip down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Break down their success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. Like I said, I've got to get to China at some stage, but it's never been appealing from a recreational point of view. But I don't know, maybe
Shanghai was pretty eye opening. Like pretty cool, and the language barrier is not as bad as you would think. Like Shanghai, it's 90% of people I think speak English. Like huge.
Yeah, I guess the more westernized they become, because they are sort of, there's part of their society that, you know, they say everyone wants a bloody Hummer and all that sort of thing, and you know, they do want to, you know, sort of take on some of the aspects of Western living and civilization.
Yeah.
But you know, and that English probably is a big part of that, so they can communicate with the Western world more efficiently.
I wish I knew Mandarin. I think that would be that's an opportunity missed. But when you're young, you're like, why would I need that?
Yeah, Kylie always says it'd be good to learn Mandarin, so that you can be, if you're ever in a lift or an elevator, you know, and there's some Mandarin speakers, you know what they're saying, probably about you as well. Yeah, so yeah, I think kids are learning it at school more so than what we ever did.
We thought about having the app that
translated
and have it on quite so we could know what they were saying in the front of the car, but then the partner was like, nah, you don't want to know. We probably don't want to know.
Yeah. Speaking of tech, have you gotten on board with the old AI and like Chat GPT and all that sort of jazz?
I would use it every day.
Yeah.
I'm just the slightest bit dyslexic. Never knew going through school. Probably explains so much of why I struggled with like reading comprehension. I can read data sheets and stuff like that because that's just bullet point stuff. Doing numbers, even phone numbers, I'll be saying to my brother, he'd be saying, what's the phone number? I'll say it, and it would be just literally switch two numbers around and do it 3 times, and then he'll be like, nah, and look at it, and it is done around the wrong way. But now, because having that growing up killed my confidence for writing. Some people just beautiful, able to put it together, structure, everything, whereas I can just now brain dump into just a giant paragraph and it will spit me back the structure. I'll read it, a lot of changes, but the structure has been made.
Right.
That is saving me hours a day.
Yeah. It's amazing, eh?
Yeah,
I've used it for a number of things over the last couple of months, and I just think it's unbelievable how it answers your questions, how it can rearrange your words to like you can ask it to sort of theme what you're saying in a different way.
Yes.
And it'll take those words and it'll make it sound same message, but I've said to it one time, can you write this like with a 5-star feel?
Yeah.
And bugger me, like it understands that command straight away, and it comes back, and these things are written down in such a way that you've written it in a hotel compendium, and it's like far out. I just think it's bloody unbelievable, and it's only been several months since we've all been using it.
Yeah.
So that whole AI thing with itself will just be learning and learning and learning. Because imagine every person on the planet's an input into it.
The AI. You're going to be sending emails, and the AI is really talking to itself.
Yeah, bloody oath. Well, and I think that's where it's kind of growing, eh? Like ever since Google's been around and the internet's been around, they've probably been collecting data and all that sort of thing anyway. Then they just make it into this bloody thing that looks like it can think. It obviously can't think, but it can you know
It can draw from all
yeah,
that data, right?
yeah. Well, it's the most data that's ever existed, and I think it keeps doubling, like something ridiculous every couple of years or whatever. Probably not even that. But as we all keep using this thing, it gets better and better at what it does. You know, so no, I'm all for it. Like, I'm trying to figure out ways to, you know, to really embed it in what we do, and because it's definitely going to be the future. I don't want it to replace people's jobs, but you know, hopefully as well, it'll you know, create new jobs as well. So
yeah, I've been using it to like I put lots of standards through it. So at first, could talk about EFEM testing, and it just goes off on a tangent about, and it's
so it knows what you're talking about.
now it does. Yeah. Now I can just talk about, hey, I'm having this conversation. I can pull in emails chains and go, I need a reply for this, and it would spit out a reply that's in line with everybody's agreements. But I can say, look, this is my feeling on it, and my inner would go and say, hey, happy with this, and this works, but this is the angle I'd like to take. It can challenge as well as go in agreement, and it's just listening to your persuasion of it, your view, and it can put that opinion in there. Like, and the more I use it, the better I get at it. The prompting.
There's clearly there's that written side of it, but it's also you know, there's also those AI art generators. I don't know if you've seen any of those.
I've seen it on Instagram. That looks...
you can type in like anything you want, and it'll generate a beautiful picture of it or something like that.
Or the photo. That's competition recently where I don't know if it's a world competition or a country competition. An AI photograph won, and it was just created through prompts. And I think the guy was a renowned photographer, but he just wanted to show that the ability, and it won the competition. And how it can make songs, and it can, I think the scary one from my point of view though is how it can manipulate images to make it look like someone's saying something. You know, to me that's a big concern. Or the voicing over
the
those
voicing,
things. Then that's scary, because that means like what's real, what's not, and then you start to go, well, maybe this is all a way of discrediting some social media. Maybe this helps people back off from it a little bit because it's not real. I think that maybe like years down the track we go, and we're not so much into the social media, we look back and go, oh, that's that generation that got really...
Yeah, man, that's a good point, because I think you're right in the fact that hopefully we will look back, and this might be known as like the social media era or the AI era. And you know, eras come and go, but who's to say it might not sort of come back again. But I think that AI thing is definitely, it's a game changer for how we live at the moment. Having just really scratched the surface of it, you know, there's so much potential for it to influence how we live and to assist us in how we live. Like I said before though, the thing that scares me is that if you got like a video of old Biden saying that he's going to nuke Russia or something like that,
what can that create?
And it looks like he's saying it, and you go, well, they take it at face value and they go, is that real or is that not? That's the scary thing for me. I'm just that's a bit of a concern, but no, I think it's cool, man. I like using it, and
it's a tool. I'll write notes into like the business manager and the other directors, and they always come back with, this is really good. That AI is a great tool. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And make sure that this is only a tool for you. You're not just putting it in and dumping stuff out. Because sometimes when you read it, you're like, oh, that is like off. So you do have to check it. But it is pretty good. Well,
you go, well, that doesn't sound like how I'd write something. You know, so you can say, oh, here's my work. It's like kids, you know, plagiarizing exams and all that sort of thing. It's like, clearly you did not write that.
My brother's reading those things at the start, and then he's like, oh, that's fantastic. And after a while, he's like, this isn't you, man. What's going on? And then I sort of was more upfront, because I was embarrassed at the start that it was able to do so much work for me, but hours saved. Hours. Mate. You know how sometimes you'll write something and it is it's got to go to important people, and you really end up thinking about it too much, especially if you don't have the confidence in your writing, and you're able to put it through that, and that, amazing.
Because I think the reason I don't have an issue about using it is because you still have the thought to
Yeah.
put that piece of information together. All you're doing is basically saying, oh, here's what I think. Can you just like kick it round a bit or make it a bit more presentable? Like it's still your idea. It's
Yeah,
not like
you're the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not sort of saying to the thing, do my job or run my life or whatever. You're going, well, here's what I think. Can you just refine it so it sounds a bit better? I could probably run several of these podcasts through there and it'd make them sound better too with all my umming and ahhing. But yeah, no, it's a good tool, man. I think it's got so much potential for any industry, really.
I think it just helps people better. Like, for me, it's the confidence it's given me, stripping the emotive language out, being faster, get to more work, not getting behind as quick. I can have important things on and use it as a tool to help me get through that work. Because sometimes you'll know as a business owner that things are, that pile of work you've got to do, you never get to the bottom of it. You only see it get bigger and smaller. So if you can help you maintain that, then that's also mental health looked after. You know, there's heaps of things.
There's all those side effects. You're right about the mental health thing, because you know if you've got a constant pile of work that you don't see that you're getting through or achieving, even though you are, but you don't see that pile diminishing. You sort of think, oh geez, am I failing? You know, and it does play with your brain.
And sometimes you're getting no results back from your work. Like those results might take ages to come. So therefore, all as you're looking at is the pile, and you're like, I'm getting through this. The pile's still there, but there's no instant feedback, and it comes later. So therefore, you're just in your own head battling the pile, and sometimes there is no, as you'll know as well. Like at the start of business, you think that there's going to be like, you get to a certain checkpoint and there's going to be people clapping and there's nobody, there's no parade, there's nothing. You just have to go, good job, and go to work the next day. But there's no, it's more of a infinite, I now look at it as more of a infinite or finite? Yeah, it's more of a long-term thing. The success of business is still being in business instead of, I did this to get a gold statue, you know?
Yeah. Gold statues and parades, mate. That sounds bloody hilarious. You got to create your own parades, eh?
Yeah.
You got to celebrate your successes and your wins, man. You know, that's a big thing. We learned that a long time ago. You know, sometimes a win might seem quite like small or insignificant, but other times they're very big and obvious.
Yeah.
But you know, a win's a win.
And sometimes the big ones are small. Something really small happened, but that is so meaningful because it might be a direction. Yeah.
No, mate, celebrate the wins. I'm all about that. Probably celebrate them too much, actually, but that's all right.
Yeah. That's, you also learn that too, eh? Like at the start, these little things are happening and having a beer, and my brother's like, you can't celebrate them all.
Oh, exactly. Well, you can bloody try.
You can try. Yeah.
But there is that thing about like wins and losses where I don't think, no matter what sort of person you are, you take the losses way harder, and whenever I have a loss about something, I bloody overthink and I like delve into it. It's like, why did that happen? Why did we fuck that up? Or you know, why did we lose that, and why didn't we win it, or whatever? And you know, it's that self-reflection thing. But man, I beat the shit out of myself when we have a loss. You know, you're quite calm in front of the team, or you sort of have your game face on in front of the team, but then you know, you quietly in the background you're going, fuck, you know, why did that happen? Why do we not learn from our mistakes or whatever? You know,
definitely agree with that. And then have been in some really bad situations where I've started to, when something initially happens, you've got no grasp on it in that initial minute. So no matter how bad it is, I'll just say 15 minutes to myself, because that just give myself that time, and it sort of comes around. You know, then you can formulate a plan, but you can so easily like really react at the start.
Fuck, you got to learn to breathe, and you got to go.
Yeah.
Okay, put a bit of distance between that. That 15 minutes is a good coping mechanism, because you know, if you say what the first thing that comes into your head after you get a bit of bad news or something, it's not necessarily the best thing.
Holy shit. And that's what people will remember about everything, you know? Oh, he really lost it there.
Exactly. That 15 minutes might be where you now go to Chat GPT and go, hey, look, I've had this. I've had this issue. How do you suggest I react? And they'll probably come up with some way to deal with that. Yeah. No, that's cool. Oh, man, good chat.
Hey, man.
Thanks for coming in again. And it'd be awesome to have another one with the Newton, that tanking system we were talking about. I'd love to learn more about that, because I think that's a real that'll be a game changer for that whole industry, really.
Especially if you can steer people in the right direction. You know, go, hey, look, this is this is what's available. Not like, okay, that cost us between $100 and $1 million to fix. You know, that's not realistic. If you can have something you slap on the inside that comes with insurance, that's different.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I don't recall any product coming with insurance.
Just a workmanship warranty and a product warranty.
Yeah.
Piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't jam that in the crack. You want to?
You could try, but it might get a bit soggy. Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Awesome, mate. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers, dude.